everyone, we're back with our Larvie Doll project, and this time we're going to be working on the head. So we finished the body in the last video. If you haven't seen that one, go back and watch it because that was pretty interesting and we used a lot of techniques. But I thought it turned out pretty well considering. And now we're going to be working on her head. So this is the head of the actual Larvie doll. It's a little different from Barbie. The features are a little bit bigger. We'll see how it turns out. We don't know how that's going to work, but we have this wire on the top that we left in, and we're just going to be making the head and then put it on top of that. We'll drill a hole in it once we finish it. So just a little disclosure here, I am going to try to use this hair off of this petite life and not have to reinvent the wheel. So what I think I'll do is cut off the top of it and see if I can just glue it onto the top of the clay. So we'll get to that later, but again, I'm using the Fimo Soft. Do not use anything else or you will break your fingers. Anyway, I have an old block of Fimo Not Soft that I'm going to use really just as a brick to put my head on because I needed something that would be firm and heavy. And by golly, it's heavy and firm. So I'm just going to stick this clay ball down on top of this. I'm not, I was thinking I was going to do this like I do when I'm making my silicone babies and I just sculpt it, But what I forgot is I always made armature. So I'm going to tell you right up front, this will not work, even with my magic tool that I always use. I love this tool. This is not going to work, and we're going to cut out a whole bunch of this where I spent an hour trying to carve this out of this soft clay. Because I was just not thinking. I know it has to have a firm base, but basically when you're trying to make a face with clay, you always are trying to add to it, and you always add more than you need because it's going to smush down. And as I was working on this for the hour that I worked on it, it just kept smushing more and more, and I wasn't really realizing it. I was just kind of caught up in the creative process, but let's cut to the chase here. This did not work, and I'll show you what did work in a minute, but I thought I'd just show you a little bit of me getting started and what I did so you know what not to do. But basically I was just trying to start out with a base, and then I was going to add and carve and magically come up with the Barbie face. But it didn't turn out that way. So the lesson is that I'm always making mistakes on this channel. I've told you that before, but that's because I'm always trying something new, and I encourage you to try new things because that's how you learn. I mean, even mistakes are part of our makeup, and when we learn, then we don't make those mistakes again if we're smart. So the takeaway is, do not try to make a face out of a soft ball of clay because it will just mush together and you will have nothing. You must have a hard base underneath so that you can press against that, and then you'll be okay. And I did this when I made my silicone baby dolls, and I had to mold them out of clay first. I had a whole armature of a solid base of the armature and the aluminum foil, just like we did for the body of the Larvie doll here. And I don't know, wasn't thinking. But you can already tell how much is mushed, and I don't know why I was missing this when I was working on it, but I was just like, it's all gonna work out. And it wasn't just that it was smushing down, it was that it was becoming very misshapen. These are some little silicone tools that I had when I was making other projects with polymer clay, and they will work really well for these smaller projects. But I just wanted to show you those before I abandon this head, just to show you, how far I got along. I mean, this was like an hour of work. So here we are. I've been doing all this sculpting, and can you tell it's like tilted back even more, and I just kept mushing on it and smushing it, and it just kept getting more and more smushed. Now here's where my tool went right into the clay in the forehead. It went into the hole where, now look at this head. This is horrible. It's like Voldemort. and I'm even at this point, I'm like, I could save it. I can save it. I can fix this. No. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I've got to have a face. What am I going to do? Okay, plan number 2. But at this point, I'm throwing this head against the wall. All right, plan number 2. We're going to make a mold. Yeah, we're going to use this easy mold silicone putty, which is so handy. I use it all the time for different things. It's a 2-part silicone putty, and you just take the 2 parts in equal amounts and smush them together, which I've already done here to save time. And we're going to sacrifice my Silkstone Barbie's face, bless her heart, so that we can make sure and get a Barbie face. All right. So we're just going to smush her face. I've tried to protect her hair with tape and pull it back as much as I can. And I pushed this down on a flat surface just to try to get it as flat as I can so that when we make the mold, it won't have like creases in it or whatever. Okay, so we're just going to smash her face down in it. Now the good thing about silicone is it sticks to nothing. So Barbie's face is safe. Don't worry. I didn't ruin her. I really probably would not have done this if I thought I would have ruined her, because this was an expensive doll. But I didn't have another Barbie, and I wasn't going to go run out to Walmart and get one. So I wanted to get this over with. All right, so I've smushed her face in here, and this takes about 25 minutes for the mold to set. So we're just going to wait. And with the magic of editing, we are back, and our mold is ready. Okay, so now I have this head that I have baked. It has aluminum foil in the middle and clay around it. And what we're going to do is put some soft clay on top of this, because we will be putting the molded piece on top of soft clay to be able to make it fit. Yeah, the new clay would not stick well to that hard clay, and it would end up being misshapen. So this is going to be a process because there's no way we're going to get a perfect head even with doing this. But, I think at this point we'll be able to at least shape it a little bit better and keep the shape of the Barbie face. So we're just going to put a layer of soft clay around that hard head, and then we'll attach the molded clay that we make to that, and it'll be easier for us to blend the molded face onto the hard head if it has this soft outer coating on it. So just a thin coat, doesn't have to be super thick. And we're going to go through lots of techniques here that hopefully will be meaningful and things that you can use in your own craft practice. So basically just, get it all stuck down really good. Make sure you don't have any air underneath. When you're doing this is a really good tendency to have pockets of air under it, and you don't want to do that because we're going to end up having to carve this head down eventually, because I know we're going to put way too much clay than we actually need for the final head. So just, make sure you're getting it really tight against the hard part, and then everything should be fine. Yeah. So we've already baked it, but the nice thing about polymer clay is as long as you're not heating it up too much, you can bake it again if you need to. Even, like put pieces onto other pieces and then bake it again. And I really like that about polymer clay. It's one of my favorite mediums to work in. So now that we have our head ready, it's nice and formed, we're going to go ahead and try to get a sort of a mask mold out of this face mold that we made of the Barbie face, and then we're going to put it across the front of this head. All right, so we're going to speed up here me smushing down the clay and getting it ready, because that takes forever and it's boring. And then the thing you really want to do, though, is to make sure you get a nice flat piece. Now, my idea was I was going to roll it out on this flat piece of aluminum foil, and that maybe would have worked better if I had tried a little bit harder. But It really didn't. So I just ended up picking it up and smoothing it out with my fingers. Just trying to get a really nice flat surface with no creases. We want to try to get as clean of a mold as we can. So we're just going to press this down in here. And, we've got a lot of little pockets in there, the eyes and the nose. So we're really going to have to smoosh this down to make sure we get the proper mold. Now, the nice thing about this particular one is it has such protruding parts where the eyelids are that it's kind of easy to line it up, to remold it if needed. And you'll see that I did need to remold it at one point. But basically just take your tool or finger and just really smush down over those places where there are small indentions in the mold, just to make sure you're going to get clay in all of those areas. So it doesn't really matter what the back looks like because you're just going to put that against the other clay. But you do want to get a nice, good, solid mold that's smooth on the front because you don't want to have to mess with it a lot. Once you get it on there, you want that to be what you see, because if you have to start messing with it, the soft clay, you're going to mess it up. Trust me, I've done it. So I'm just really trying to smoosh it down right now and get all of the little small places covered. All right, so now we're going to be able to pull it off and see, what kind of mold we got on the first try. Hopefully it works. Actually, I already know what happened because I already did it. But anyway, I'm showing you guys. So we're going to pull this off. Now, I noticed that the lips were a little bit askew, although I thought the rest of the head looked pretty good. You maybe can't tell in this picture, but it looked like the lips were a little bit smushed side to side. So I decided to try to stick it back in there and see if I could get a little bit cleaner mold. And like I said, it was pretty easy to line it up because you could see the nose and those protruding eyelids pretty easily. I mean, you could have just, started over with a fresh piece of clay, but at this point I was thinking, I think I can make it fit in there pretty well. And then if I could just smush down the lips a little bit more, then it will work. And then the other part of this is that I want to trim off some of the top and the bottom of this mask because I'm not going to need those, and it will wrinkle if I'm trying to put that on, because I don't want to have to smush it too much. I want to be able to keep the mask around the front part as pristine as I can. All right, so I'm just cutting off the top part that I'm not going to need, and then I'm going to cut off the bottom part just below where the chin is, just to get off a little of that excess clay. And I think it'll make it a whole lot easier for us to mold it. And yes, it did. All right, so at this point, I think we got it smushed pretty good. I think I'm pretty satisfied now. So now we're just going to take this and wrap it onto our head that we have the soft clay wrapped around. And I think, I think having that extra on the side is fine because you can just smooth that back, and that's just going to help attach it. Plus you don't have to mess too much with the part of the face that's the molded part. Now this top part here, there was a gap in the top, so I'm just going to jam a piece of clay, extra clay down in there because I wanted to keep the shape of her forehead the way it was. I don't want it to start sloping backward because that would not look like Barbie. So now all this is a process of smoothing around the edges and attaching that mask to the front of the hardened head that we baked. So we'll speed it up a little bit here, just using my tool, fingers, whatever, to smush it. Try to stay away from the front of the face as much as possible because I don't want to mess it up. But I really think that's turned out pretty well. It kind of saved the day because I really, after I messed up that head, you know what it is when you work on it for so long, it's like you don't want to give up, That was the thing. And it also, I think, adds to the heartache, the agony of defeat when you spend so much time working on something. Especially when you look back and you go, I should have known. I should have known that that was not going to work, to just try to mold the soft head. But anyway, so now we're just going to continue with molding this mask onto the head. I think you can already tell that the back of it is way too big. It's going to be too long in the back, but that's okay. We'll just carve that off. It's the front part that counts, and as long as the front part works, we can always carve the back, because the back is just going to be a smooth head, and then we'll actually be covered with hair eventually, so we don't really have to worry about it too much. Now the other thing is, I started seeing that the sides of the face were getting a little bit too mushed in. Just the process of this clay being, soft. So here's a nice thing. You can always go back and put it back in the mold and sort of flatten things out a little bit. It just started pressing in too much around the temples. So this way I was just able to smush it back in there, get it a little bit more back in shape. Sometimes this won't work. If you can't line it up properly, it'll mess it up. But this worked really well. I was able to kind of get the shape back and just continue working on it then. Keep in mind with polymer clay, if you get to a point that you can bake it, to go ahead and bake it so that you can preserve whatever design it is that you're trying to preserve, or a sculpture. But when you can do that is when all you need to do is take off things and maybe put, some fresh clay down and bake and rebake it. But the sides of this face, I really needed to get it to where it was smoother, because that was not a part that I really wanted to pull, have to cut away and then add clay to. I wanted the front of the face and the sides and the forehead to be pretty much pristine and stay the way it was. Now the back of the head, all that's territory for us to work on later in a more dramatic way. And what I'm doing now is really just very, very gently smoothing out some areas. Telling you like a butterfly's touch because the clay is so soft at this point from working it. The nose needed to just be cleaned up just a little bit. The lips were still a little bit crooked, so I was able to just very gently mess on those. Trust me, I am not pressing hard at all, because it would just go right into the clay, and then you would have a big mess. So when you get to this point, any little touches you're doing should be feather light. And I'm also making use of some water and those silicone tools. That helps too, to keep the touch very light. So at this point, I think I'm getting pretty happy with the front, and the back can do whatever. And I just was looking at it versus the body to look at the size, and it looked like a pretty good size to me. So all in all, I'm pretty happy at this point. I think we can bake it, and then we can come back and do some more adjustments by cutting away the back part that's too big. But the front part is looking pretty good. One last thing I want to do before I bake it is make an imprint of where this hair is going to go, because that part's going to have to be cut out. I'm going to have to make a valley in the top of her head to set the hair down into and glue it. I think that's going to be the best way to do this. So I'm just going to set my head over here, keep it from falling over. I'm going to take this petite Blythe head that I've removed from the body, and I'm going to cut as close to the hairline as possible with the X-Acto. And don't cut your fingers, but cut as close as you can. You don't want to cut up into the hair, because then the hair will fall out at that part. And then I'm going to just take that and sit it down on top of the head where I want it to be attached, and that will give me a pattern of where it needs to be cut out. Now, somehow or other, when I did that, it was so much smaller than what it actually needed to be. I don't know why. I mean, I know clay will shrink a little tiny bit, but it didn't shrink that much, trust me. But I ended up having to do quite a bit of work to carve out the place for this hair. For some reason, what I put down, it ended up needing to be a lot bigger. And I'm really not sure why. But these are the things you deal with when you've never done it before. I mean, this is something I've never tried to do before. So hopefully, you get some tips from this. And if you try to do it, you won't make as many mistakes as I did. All right, so we've got that. And that's really what I'm hoping I can just like carve out a round area on top of her head, indented, and then just stick that down into it so that the hairline is right at the top of where the clay is, and it'll look like, that it's part of the clay, basically. Yeah, it was a good idea. I mean, it ended up being okay. I'll tell you, it did it. But there was a lot of work to get it there. Yeah, so if you need to trim a little bit more, you can. Try to just get it as close to the hairline as you can. And that means the less you have to carve out of the clay. And that's really the goal, because there's just not a lot of real estate with this doll. There's not a lot of real estate with her head to deal with. So, and I wanted to try to preserve as much of the scalp of this doll as I could, because that would be as much hair as possible. And we want to have as much hair as possible to play with. So I'm really excited. Like, I'm already thinking, like, what kind of outfit can I put her in? And she needs sunglasses. She's already got a lot of shoes. So, she doesn't need a lot of shoes. But I think maybe some Blythe clothes may fit her. I think it won't be any Blythe clothes, because I think some of them will have too long of sleeves. Her arms are not that long in comparison to a Blythe or other 12-inch doll. But I'm thinking some you'll just have to look at it. Like, it had to have a pretty wide body too, and maybe would have to have, it's not something, I don't think you would want to have a pullover, like a sweater pullover. You would want to have either an opening in the front or the back. But lots of possibilities with this. I think petite Blythe hats will fit her well. Barbie maybe hats. I don't have any Barbie hats, honestly, because I only have that one Barbie. Mostly what I have is Blythe. Either the Neo Blythe, the Midi Blythe, or the Petite Blythe. And Midi Blythe heads are bigger than hers, so those wouldn't work. But the Petite Blythe head, since I'm using this hair, is about the same size. I do have some toboggans and stuff. Alright, so now I'm just going to press that down onto the top, trying my best not to let anything hit the front of her face and mess it up. And as you can see, I made an indentation. I mean, that should work, right? That should be the size of the hair. Yeah, it wasn't. So I'm just taking a tool now and sort of making that indentation a little bit deeper. You want to be careful here. You don't want to start doing too much with that, because any place you work on with clay, you've got to hold on to it somewhere else, and you don't want that somewhere else to be the front of her face. That's all I got to say about that. So anyway, we baked her. You can see I carved out that place, and that's just where I realized that is not going to fit. Yeah. I also carved off the back of her head, and I can actually tell you, at this point, we're going to have to carve more. Now, what that means is we're going to be carving into the aluminum foil portion of the head. And that's okay, because we're just going to put some clay over it. But the back of the head was just too big. So At this point, I'm just going to keep carving and get it to the shape that I want, and then I can put a little bit more clay over that. But it's getting close. I mean, that's not bad. And let's be honest. She's a worm. She's not a human. We don't have to stick with human proportions. That's my saving grace here. She's a worm. We can make her really look like however we want her to look. And she doesn't have to look exactly like the larvae, because it's really the concept here. It's a worm doll. You know, it's the concept of having a worm doll with 1 foot and not Apple Barbie. And I think we've accomplished that pretty well. The body, I'm pretty happy with that. So, and I think this face is going to end up being okay too. You know, we just have a lot of work to do. We've got to put some more clay on here. We're going to have to sand this down. Now that sanding tool I'm using right there, that's pretty harsh sandpaper. If you really want to take off a lot of clay, that's the thing to use. But keep in mind, that's not the tool you want. That's not the head of this tool you want to use if you want it to be smooth. That leaves a lot of ridges because of the coarseness of the grain of the sandpaper. But at this point, I'm trying to remove quite a bit of clay to get down to where I want it to be, and it would just take too long to use the other attachment that's really more for smoothing. You can get different grits of these sandpaper heads too. I actually have, I think, 3 different ones, and I'm using, I actually think I'm using the smallest one. I don't even think I'm using the biggest one, because I was afraid I would take off too much and then I'd be screwed, especially, you know, with the front of her face. But basically just shaping things up a little bit more now to get ready for the final clay process. Also, I had to end up carving a lot more out of the top of her head to make that place for the hair. But if you can use this sanding attachment and get it to where you want it to be, then you can use one of the attachments that's not so harsh to smooth out the ridges that were created by this head. And then the final sanding is always that 3M foam backed sanding paper or sanding foam that really is, you know, nice to smooth it out. Because we still have to paint her face, and we want her face to be nice and smooth. And I know this is a really long video. Hopefully, you know, you're not minding that. But there was a lot of process, and some of this I wanted to show you in slower motion. Sometimes I'll speed things up if I think you've got the technique, or if I've already done that before. But some of this is brand new stuff, so I'm going a little bit slower. That one of the things you also want to keep in mind is when you're sanding with this type of head, you are creating a lot of polymer clay dust. So you may want to wear a face mask, and if you're doing this somewhere that the dust is a problem, you know, going into places, you might want to put something down, but it creates a lot of dust, and that can't be really good to breathe. I'm just saying, it's plastic, and this is Earth Day too, so, you know, I mean, that's the major problem with those heads, is my sandpaper always goes flying off. But you can see how much just on the table of that dust is, and it's all over me, it's all over the floor. But you know, you can wear a mask. That's why, you know, if you go get your nails done, you know, those guys wear masks. They don't want to be breathing that acrylic dust coming off of your nails. So I'm going to be carving more here, and this is where I actually got into some of the aluminum foil. It just still was way too big, and, you know, just didn't look like a head. was just too much on the back part. So if you get into the aluminum foil, because that's a part that was crumpled up, you may have to take tweezers and pull some of that out if you can't pull it out with your fingers. Some of it I could, some of it I couldn't. But pulling that out, you want to make sure then to press it back down in there and get it nice and firm to put your clay on top of. Otherwise, it's going to smoosh down too much. So still just trying to eyeball it, make sure I've taken off enough. And here's where I was using some tweezers to pull some more of it out. Once you get enough out, press it back down, get it nice and firm and smooth. You don't want to leave that loose. That will cause a problem. But I think this is a good process, and I think you could use this for other things, like if you were making any kind of character and you didn't feel comfortable making that head, carving it yourself, you can always make use of that mold. And we could have even used the mold for the foot. You would have had to do it in two parts, a top and a bottom. I mean, side and side. And that was one reason I really didn't want to do that, because when you try to do that, that just creates a whole other set of issues. But yeah, you could make molds out of all different kinds of things if it's something that you don't feel comfortable that you can mold with your hands. And that's why I like that a lot. Now you'll see she has earrings, and we'll have to add the ears, but we're not going to put that on there now. We're going to make the ears separate and then just glue them on later. So for right now, all we're going to do is just make sure we've got the head. So I'm having to open up some more clay. I think I used a total of 3 packs. 3 or 4? Well, I had 4 packs, and I ended up using, I think, 3.5 packs total. So if you're going to do this project, you're going to need about 4 packs of that clay. Alright, so we've got the head. Now I'm putting some more soft clay on. When you do this, you're going to have to mold the soft clay into the sides of the head that are already baked. So that's kind of a problem, but that's where that tool comes in good, and you can put a little bit of water on the head of it, and that helps with smoothing. But you want to try to get it as smooth as you can, and that way all you have to do after you bake it is to run that fine sandpaper over. You don't want to have to go in with that granular sandpaper. It will not work, trust me. It's just going to rough it up too much, and then you're going to have it looking like it's not smooth on the side. So just try to get it as smooth as you can, and then you'll be able to go over it with that fine soft sandpaper, the one that's foam back. Alright, so we have baked this, and now we're going to be using this head of the little sanding tool. That's a smoothing head. And go over some of those ridges that we need to smooth down a little bit more. That would be hard to do with the foam sandpaper. It would just be too much. But with this head, it keeps it pretty smooth, and also it's a little bit more aggressive in terms of getting the ridges smoothed out. So now it's really just a process of smoothing and shaping. I will have to cut out the top of the head more, but that's something I ended up doing off camera. I was actually doing it while I was working, because I work online. So in between seeing my patients, I was working on my doll head. But that's the nice thing about working from home. You can do things in between. So there's that 3M super fine foam sandpaper. That's always the last thing I use, because it's nice. You can cut pieces off so you can sand in smaller areas, and it's going to put a nice finish on your clay or other things maybe that you use too. And for the last one, I always go in a circular motion, because then you don't leave any kind of marks. Circular motion. So you can see you can just cut it, you can bend it, it goes into the crevices really easy. Really one of my favorite products. That and E6000, right? Yep. Alright, so now I think we're ready to see if we can fit this on the head, and I'm just looking to where I want to drill my hole. And looking at my drill bit to make sure it's the right size for that armature wire. And then I have this handy Black & Decker tool that fits both drill bits and screwdriver tips. And I use this a lot in my crafts. So now we're just going to drill into the head and the bottom where I want it to attach. Now I thought originally that I would be actually attaching the head to the body, but after I put it on and it swiveled nicely, I thought, hey, this way it's kind of like a ball joint. I can keep it where I can move it, and that way she can look in different areas, because it fit kind of nicely. I mean, I hadn't really planned to do that. I thought I'd end up having to put some more clay in there and make a neck and, you know, bake it and that kind of stuff. Sorry you can't see that. I was off camera. I apologize, but there you go. Yeah, so you can see, you can move it back and forth. So yeah, let's just leave it like that. That's kind of cool. So now we got jointed arms and we've got a jointed neck, and that adds a lot to the doll. So yeah, now this is a process of where we need to paint the face. Now, polymer clay is a little bit porous. I don't know if I want to say porous, but anyway, not a real flat, even texture. Plus, you want to protect it in case you need to take it off. So I'm just going to spray it with some water, get all the dust off and any residue. And then we're going to put down a layer of a matte medium. And matte medium is something that will protect the surface of whatever you're painting, creates a nice grippy surface for the paint. Here's me realizing again that I'm going to have to do more to this head to get that hair on there. It goes, it's just bigger than the hole I got. Anyway, the matte medium that I use is Liquitex. It works pretty well, smooths. As it dries, it sort of levels out, fills in any little tiny pockets that might be on the face and creates a nice base. This is what it looks like. You can buy this at Michael's. You could get it on Amazon, I'm sure. Some people have asked me, can you use this in an airbrush? Yes, you can, but you have to thin it down a little bit with some water. And personally, that's way more trouble than I want to go to for not much difference if you use a nice soft brush. So just going to put this on here and work it down and make sure you don't have any hairs or lint or pieces of dirt. That's the main thing, because it will dry in it and then you're stuck with it. And this is going to protect the face, and we'll end up putting a coating of Mr. Super Clear on it when we finish it. So the tackiness of this that makes the paint and pastels that I use stick to it will be covered up eventually. But I did put two coats of the matte medium and let that dry for several hours. I wanted it to be nice and firm. So now we're going to try to paint this similar to the Larvie doll, but more like the stone Barbie, because it's her face and it really fits the character to be more painted like that. The eyes are much smaller on the Barbie that I have than on that Larvie doll, so it's going to be a little different, but that's okay. It's going to be our unique doll, and I kind of like that. I like that she's going to be just ours. So I'm using a quadruple zero brush here, the smallest brush I could find, and I'm putting down white for the sclera of the eye first. I had to put a couple of coats to make sure it was nice and white. And then I am going to go in with some blue, but first I'm going to put the red on the lips. Now the lips that got molded, I did a little bit of over painting because I wanted her to have that Cupid's bow lip on the top lip. So over painted just a little bit to give her that look, because that's a real Barbie look. Because it really ended up the mold where the top lip was just really straight across, and I didn't like that. But yeah, just have to really take your time. I really hate painting little small things like this. I don't know why, my hands just don't like it. They shake. So I did it though. I managed to do it. Yay. But the nice thing is if you have that matte medium and you make a mistake, you can just wash it off with water. Whereas if you were painting directly onto the polymer clay, there's a chance that you could stain the clay and you couldn't get that color permanently out, and you might have to sand it off. So putting another coat of the white down on the eye, and then I'm going to have to mix up some white and blue to get a little bit lighter color blue, because the eyes of the Barbie are more of a lighter blue than that dark blue that I have there. Also, I'm using chalk pastels to give her a little bit of blush. And I use it's actually an eyeshadow brush. It's not a paintbrush, because it's so much softer. And sometimes with paintbrushes, you'll leave streaks when you're using pastels. So I've learned if I find some really nice eyeshadow brushes that work, and that one that I had did. So also now I'm using a little bit of brown to give her some eyebrows, and I'm going to go over this with some watercolor pencils also to put some strokes in it. But I like to have this base because it gives it a good shape and it's a good background. Now the one on the left I ended up messing up, and this is an example of how I was able to go back and just take some water. I put some water on my finger really and just wiped it off. So matte medium, good stuff. Put it down. I use that on my Blythes as well. Although you can also, on like the harder plastics like a Blythe, you can use Mr. Super Clear as your base. But I have used this matte medium as a base on those dolls as well. Alright, now I'm just mixing up some blue and white to make a little bit lighter color blue for her iris. So we'll put the iris down, and then we'll put a black dot for the pupil. These are really tiny eyes. I'm telling you, this was a challenge. But they ended up working out pretty well. It would have been actually easier to do them the size of the Larvie doll, but I kind of like the Barbie that I have. She's kind of sexy, don't you think? Anyway, she's going to be looking off to the side just like the Barbie is looking off to the side. I think that gives a little bit more of an alluring look. So putting the iris off center. And I also use toothpicks a lot with these little areas, because sometimes you can just wet the tip of a toothpick and remove a small area of mistake. Now I'm just taking a toothpick and to make a white dot in the center of the pupil to give her that glow. Now, this Barbie had that really thick eyeliner, and that part of this molded face was really sticking out. So this was probably the hardest part, was to make sure I got that symmetrical so they look the same, and my hands keep shaking. But that's a real Barbie look too, that thick eye, or the old Barbie, the original Barbie, which are the best Barbies. But at this point, we've got most of the face done. We just have a little bit of fine tuning. So I had to use a toothpick to kind of smooth out a couple areas where it wasn't exactly even. So if you wet the tip of a toothpick like that, you can really just sort of almost remove a little small error, not have to repaint it. I think once you start adding that eyeliner, she starts looking like Barbie, don't you? That's just so Barbie. I don't know, did y'all see the Barbie movie, by the way? I thought it was excellent. I mean, such a social commentary. And of course, I think the acting was really good. Alright, now I'm using a watercolor pencil. I want to make a line underneath her eye, but I don't want to try to paint that because I will definitely mess that up. Also, she has some little eyelashes that come out the bottom, and I'm going to use the watercolor pencil for that. So just making a line underneath the eye to define that a little bit more, and then just making a few tiny little streaks down for her eyelashes. Now I'm using a brown pencil and just putting in some strokes over that pastel that I put down so that it looks a little bit like hair. She's coming along. She's coming along. Just, I was darkening up the eyelashes a little bit there. Now also, she had a little bit of a shadow, like a darker shadow, so I'm using a little bit lighter brown pencil than I used on the eyebrows, and also using that to give her some very slight nostrils. The Barbies don't really have that defined nostril, but anyway, that's how the Barbie looks, and she's looking pretty good, pretty close. It's not going to be exact because I'm doing it by hand, but that makes it uniquely mine, and then it could be uniquely yours if you make one, right? You can use these toothpicks, like if you have to go in and just make a little thing. Right now, I like that the Barbie has that beauty mark on the side of her face. It's very French. So I had to give her one too. Right up above her lip. Not all Barbies have that, but this one did. And just a little touch up on that one eye that I thought didn't have enough of the white for the glimmer in her eye. Just adding a little bit with the toothpick. Toothpicks are very handy. So are cuticle sticks. Like, I use them a lot too. Like, you wet the tip of them. If you're working on something bigger, it can just sort of absorb a mistake. But with this pinpoint of the toothpick, it works really well. Alright, so that's our face. Now we're going to put some coats of Mr. Super Clear down. And then we have her ears here we're going to glue on. So I've sprayed her with Mr. Super Clear 3 coats. I've carved out more of her head. Her ears are glued on. Now we are going to glue down her hair. I think we have a big enough crevice in her head now. I carved on that thing so much, guys. You have no idea. So what I'm going to do is put a layer of E6000 down in the crater. It's like her brain is showing. And then I'm going to put a little bit on the hair, on the bottom of the hair. And the reason is, when you have something that porous like the hair, and all you have is what, if I had just put down this amount on the head, sometimes it will just absorb it and it won't adhere very well. So what I want to do, especially around the edges of this hair, is put a little bit of the E6000 down so that I can make sure that it's going to attach around the edges. The center part, I'm not that much worried about. You know, it'll stick eventually, but the edges are what's going to have to be very, very much stuck around in the crevice of this head. So I'm just going around the outside of the hair, putting some E6000, and then I'm just going to take a toothpick and kind of smush it down a little bit, just because I don't want it squishing out. I don't want it to be a big glob there, you know, and then when I press it down, it squishes out on the side of her head. The goal here is no squishing I want it to press down. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to actually physically hold this for 30 minutes. I'm telling you, I'm so dedicated. So the thing is, the reason I had to hold it is the sides kept coming up. So I had to really press it down on both sides and the back. The front seemed to do okay. It kind of pressed right down. But I guess it just wasn't the exact same contour. Like the head wasn't the exact same contour as that scalp thing. So I had to really press it down. So yeah, I stopped the video, went, sat in bed and held it. And then I put it on her body and it looks so good. Don't you think? Oh, she's so cute. I really like how she turned out. And I like she can turn her head. I really wasn't planning to do that. But see, happy accident. I mean, you could attach it if you wanted to. But I kind of like moving it. Yeah. So the next thing is I want to make some holes in her ear because it's going to be a whole lot more fun to play dress up with her if she can have earrings. And the Barbie that I have, you know, it's that she has these. So I'm going to use this little tiny tool. This is a hand drill with little small bits. And I'm just going to drill down into her head as far as I can. Now I ended up having to drill a couple of times here, but for some reason, I don't know if it was hitting glue. It's like when it came out, it had glue on it. I don't know. Anyway. And then when I tried to put the earring wire down in it, it didn't want to go. So I ended up having to drill it a couple more times just to make sure I had a nice patent hole. So you want to really be able to stick that wire in there pretty good because otherwise the earring will fall out. But this way, you know, you can change your earrings if you want for different outfits, different colors. I can make her different earrings. But these are just head pins that you use to make earrings with that have the loop on the end. So I'm going to use this little small jewel that has a loop to attach to it. And that'll be her dangly earrings. And then I'm going to make her a necklace to match also. So we're going to open up that round head on the head pin. And when you're doing this, I know I've told you this before, but for new people, you want to twist this open. You don't want to pry it open. You want to twist it. Otherwise, you lose the strength of the circle. So you twist it open. You put your little attachment on it. Then you twist it back. If you try to pull it open apart, it really weakens the wire, and then it can pull apart much easier. All right, then we're going to bend it and cut the excess off with just enough to stick into our head. That sounds horrible, but yeah. So we want it to dangle, so we're going to leave a little bit of that head pin there above the circle part. And then just bend it in an L shape or 90 degrees. And once we've bent it, then we can cut off the excess wire. And then we can put it into her head. And it's not much, maybe 1/4 of an inch. I don't know, it's not a lot. And I cut it at an angle too, so it was a little bit pointy on one end. And now we're just going to push it into that hole as far as we can get it to go in. I think we should be able to get the whole thing in there because I drilled pretty far in. But it also seemed like on this ear there was some resistance. I don't know why. Could have been the aluminum foil. It's possible. If it was just clay, should just go right in. But even now, I'm getting a little bit of resistance. So after we do this, we're going to make one for the other side of the head, and then we'll make a necklace, and then we'll have a complete set. But I made green earrings because I have a little sweater that it's a Blythe sweater that I think may fit her, and we're going to try to put her in it after we get the jewelry done. But we must have our jewelry. So that's how it looks. Yeah, her ears are a little big, but hey, like I said, she's a worm. It's okay. I'm saying that worms have big ears, okay? She's not a Barbie. She's a Larvie. I can't wait to take her places and take pictures with her. I just think it's hilarious. I think whoever did this was brilliant. What an idea, right? All right, so we've made the other earring with the magic of editing. It went really fast. So now we're going to take this gold chain and make her a necklace. And I made it kind of long just because I thought it would probably need to come out over the sweater. But you can, make it any way that you want. But I'm using 2 jump rings, one small, to attach the pieces of the chain together. I have these jump rings that are all different sizes, so I'm going to use one that's kind of small, probably like 1/8 of an inch, and then one that's a little bit bigger to attach that green jewel to the necklace. And I attached that to the part that I joined together, so that way you can just hang it around her neck. And since her head comes off, that's really easy. You don't have to put something that you can open like a clasp. You don't have to do that. You just take her head off, put the necklace on, put her head back on. So yeah, again, we're twisting that jump ring apart instead of pulling it apart. And then we're going to attach the 2 ends of the necklace to it, and then we'll close it back up. I know this is going slow here, but this is new techniques, so I wanted to show you this. You can use this to make your own necklace or a necklace for any dolls that you have. I mean, if you wanted to have a clasp, you can always put one, and if you have those jump rings, you can use those to attach the clasp, but I didn't want to go to that much detail on her, especially since her head comes off. So now we can take the little bit bigger jump ring, open it up, put the jewel on, again twisting it open. Put the little jewel on, and then we're gonna attach it. I started to close it up, and then I was like, oh, wait, I gotta attach it. So I had to open it back up again. So now we're gonna attach it to the smaller jump ring that we put on the necklace. And then we can just hang it around her neck. Now we can twist it back together. And there's our necklace. So now she has a matching set, earrings and necklace. Yay. It's pretty long. Maybe should have made it a little bit smaller. So here's the little sweater jacket that I'm going to try. This is going to be nice to be able to have these movable arms so we can pull them back, and that way we'll be able to get the jacket on her pretty easy. One of the reasons that I wanted to have the arms movable was this. I knew it would be really hard to put any kind of outfit on her with sleeves if the arms didn't move. It would be very, very hard. Now, this particular jacket, I don't know if you can tell or not, but it has pretty short sleeves. Now, a lot of Blythes don't. They have longer arms. And I mean, I think this was a Blythe jacket. I don't think it was a midi Blythe. Maybe so. I don't know. Anyway, I think it was a Blythe jacket, but it could have been a midi Blythe. I might be wrong. But if it was a fat midi, because it needed to be fat to go around this worm. But it has little elastic loops, and I'm just pulling those with my fingernail and looping those around the buttons. Like, this would be the perfect outfit for her because it's open and it's wide enough that it can go around her body. So this was perfect. Anything that's stretched would probably work too. Now, if you looked at the picture that I showed you of the original, she just had like a tube top kind of thing, you know, like a bathing suit top. It was made out of that black and white stripe that was the original Barbie's bathing suit, which, you know, gave it that iconic look. But our girl is going to be fashionable maggot. Alright, so I'm going to put the necklace back on. It fell off while I was putting the jacket on. And then we'll put her head on. See, I'm not sure pulling the head on and off is a good idea, but for this point, I like it. We'll see. I mean, I could always glue it down later. There she is. Now for my favorite part, the shoe. I'm gonna find a shoe that matches her outfit. You know, we have like a million shoes. So I'm thinking like a blue, that blue that matches the sweater. I mean, I could go with a darker blue because there are dark blue flowers on it, but I'm thinking this color. Yeah. It's so snazzy. So much fun. And I think this whole bag of shoes was like $5 or something on Amazon. It's all like fake Barbie shoes. But yeah, I think that'll work. Now, you do want to be careful though with this foot because it's small. You don't want to really force anything too much. So I'm just gently working the shoe on. Definitely don't want to break it after all the work we did on it. But it fits. I mean, the shoe fits. And she gonna wear it. Oh, it looks so good. So cute. Now, you remember I said earlier you could disguise that mark on her leg? So you could put an ankle bracelet down. You could just glue like a chain around it. But honestly, it doesn't show that much. So I'm not going to do that at this point. It really doesn't show up as, you know, I think after I sanded it, it really kind of meshed together. Now this is a petite Blythe hat, but I like it because it kind of matches the colors of the sweater. It has a little bit of that green in it. So we're just dressing her all up. Doesn't she look good? I think she looks great. I'm really happy with her. And I'm going to take her places. I'm going to take her on a trip, make pictures of her in different places because I think she's funny. Well, guys, I'm going to take some photos to show you after this. But that's our finished product. We're done. This was a long video. Thanks for sticking it out with me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe learned a few new techniques or new things to do. Maybe you want to try to make your own. But here she is before we got her hair put on her in her naked wormness. And then here's a picture of her with her hair in her naked wormness. So cute. So segmenty. And then I took some more pictures of her in her outfit. Fashion shots because she's a fashion maggot. So now we got to name her. So why don't you come up with some names and put them in the comments. I'd love to see what you think she should be named. There's a little close-up of her face. I like how it turned out. And then a little bit more of a frontal view, but still able to see the fashionable foot. Of course. So that's it, guys. That's the end of this project and the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe.